Hello, and hopefully welcome back. You are joining us for episode 2 of 4, where I speak to Dr. Calvin Lawrence. And this episode is going to be all about leadership in school environments. If you don't already know, Dr. Calvin Lawrence has taught for over 40 years in all kinds of spaces in education. He was a special education teacher, he's been a principal, assistant principal, and university professor. And Dr. Lawrence is all about relationships and people. His new memoir, The Happy Leader, is a soul-facing guide that's focused in on giving real advice and stories to anyone who wants to lead and navigate life with care and connection as their guiding lights. And if you didn't already know, I'm Christina Kottman. I'm a former elementary educator, and I taught for a decade in international schools. Now I'm focused on bringing you the stories from real educators, their struggles, their wisdom, and their advice so that we can bring education forward into the future. In this second conversation, we are talking all about leadership in schools. And Dr. Calvin Lawrence is going to focus in on how leadership is not about a title, but about an attitude and mindset. So, listeners, if you would like to ground in by thinking about an experience when you worked with a leader who really understood you, who supported you, and maybe remember some moments when you worked with a leader who didn't get you, who wasn't there for you. Think about that as we jump into this second conversation with the incredible Dr. Calvin Lawrence. Thank you for joining me again for this second episode. We're talking all about leadership, and I want to start with focusing in on all the different roles that you've had in education. And I particularly want to step into that moment when you were in charge of reshaping a school culture in a public charter school in Texas. So can you take us back to that moment and give us some context?
Okay, I will. And so I had been a teacher for about 10 years before that period. I had been a administrator as an assistant principal for at least 10 years. And I would have been, during that last portion of that 10 years, been looking for an opportunity to be the primary or the lead person, to be a principal of a school. And the charter school situation happened I think at a pretty decent time in my life. I'm going to take it back. Let's see. If I go back when I took on that charter school, it was a little more than 22, 23 years or so ago.
Ooh.
So I had, guess I would say it this way, risen up the ladders to some degree. I had some leadership experience under my belt. And Christina, I kind of understood because I had been in not just in Virginia, but in Texas, in cultures that I knew what to take from, and I knew what I didn't want to have in my particular building on my campus. And so I learned by experience, sometimes the hard way. Sometimes the best knowledge comes from those failed experiences or some of those bad experiences. There was an experience not too long prior to that I knew I never wanted to be that type of leader. And everything that particular person did, if you did the opposite, you were probably going to be a pretty decent leader. So I learned through those experiences. And so when I took that role, I had an opportunity to apply for the role. I felt like I was ready. Had an opportunity to also hire my staff, which is kind of neat. The charter school situation is neat in itself because I think there are pros and cons to any type of situation with regards to education. So some of the cons are because we're so small, we've got to do a lot of things. You've got to wear a lot of hats. It's not so easy as if you're in a major high school, you've got a custodian to do this, a cook to do this, a security guy to do this and whatnot. You may be wearing some of those hats or all of those hats within one school day. And so to get the people and the culture that you want, and this will go not just for charter schools, but for any school. And again, I learned from experience and I learned from those leaders that I wanted to emulate. One in particular, I can think of his name. His name was David Walker. And he was always really, really good about his staff. And so it was like, so what is this thing about it? Because you can read you can see or read about whatever the philosophies are and the theories and theoretical pieces about culture and how important it is. But that's one thing. To actually see it and to see it in action is another thing. And so one of the good things I took from him was his leadership core. He did probably the best job of all the leaders that I had before in terms of making sure that we were taken care of. I really think he shared this belief with me that he shared and with the rest of us that if he took care of us, we were going to take care of his people and then they were going to take care of the students. And so there's a trickle down effect, which I talk about or which I like to talk about with regards to leadership. If the culture in a building is great, it's because you have a great leader. If the culture in a building is horrible or mediocre or however you want to call it, it's probably emanating from that leadership piece or that leadership core. And so I knew that when I took on the charter school that I took on, the very first thing, the most impactful thing, besides instruction, because I know everybody wants to talk about the instruction and the test scores and all the other things, but if you don't get that culture right, which I think is fundamental. It's almost like building a house or building a building. If you don't get that right, everything else falls on itself. So it was very important to not only hire, but model what you want to see in the building. The students got to see me a lot because that's just how I learned. You have to be visible. You can't be the office guy, even though you've got a lot of paperwork and whatnot. You got to get that done when you got to get that done. Sometimes I hate to say this to some people who are thinking about leadership, but it might be after hours or it may be on the weekends. But the primary thing is your people. Primary, number one. Culture is people. Culture is about people. And so you not only hire, but then you start to work the process of how do you treat your employees. Because if you treat them the way you want to be treated, it's kind of like golden rule kind of thing here. You treat them the way they need to be treated. And maybe even beyond that, they will in turn do the same thing with the students. And then you cut down on. So let me get back to the charter schools. So the charter schools in a lot of places, maybe not everywhere, because there are charter schools that are for gifted and talented. There are charter schools that target just one particular type of and I say charter schools target one particular type of course. It might be that they do the culinary arts or the arts or theater. They have a focus. But there are a lot of charter schools who are recovery type schools. That was the school that I was in. So I had students who had failed in different places, students who had not been wanted or felt wanted in a lot of places. So you know that going in, you know that's what you're working against. How do they trust you? How do they feel about you? Things that you have to do 24/7, consistent basis to break through the barriers that they built up. Because they built up a lot of barriers. They've been a lot of places. I can think of one. I'll use a story because stories are great to illustrate points. I had a student my first year who was brilliant, but she did not do well in groups and didn't do really good with people. Christina, her major in college was anthropology. So she didn't really have to spend a lot of time with people, but it was like the sweet spot for her. She could do the bones, she could do the research. That was who she was. But if she came up against, and I'll say it just like that, any kind of authority, there was resistance. So I know how she got, I'll use this word, excommunicated from her former school because she needed or wanted to do things her way. Now, and I had some of the background of her, and her mom and dad had to sit down with me and we talked about some issues, and I knew, oh, okay, she's not the one that you just want to, get in her face and say, you're going to do it like this and this is and in a lot of places that's what happens. Give her what she needs. Let her run with it. As long as she's following the rules, she's good. She was my valedictorian. I think I led off with that because her grades were like at the top. They were like, because she could have been a valedictorian at probably any school in our little area our service area that we had. But that resistance with authority, that was her thing. And I knew she needed to get to college, because then you got the freedom and you got some other things. That's one of the reasons we had such a good time at JMU, by the way, that you might not have had, you might not have when you're in high school. High schools are rigid. High schools are structured. High schools are, you do it our way, or you hit the highway, or you go to the alternative places. And so it really worked. But I was consistent with her. I didn't have to be overbearing with her. And here's another lesson too: you cannot treat everyone the same, but they all need the same kind of fairness. So, and I learned this from a great coach years ago. There are students or athletes that you pat them on the back, they're good. Somebody else though, they need that kick in the what. But with some kids, you can't do that with them. They're out of there. And so you got to know your people. How do you get to know your people? Spend time with them. And I have this thing about names, but names is really like the surface crust of it. But it's funny, Christina, a lot of places people don't really worry too much about learning the names of people, whether it's the people they serve with, or the students. They might have a seating chart and a name, but in terms of like, if I saw you out in the hallway, they could not call your name from Adam or Jim or Susie. But so names have been big with me. Now, my wife would say, you got a great memory though. And I do, but I also have to work at it, because you have to be intentional. Because if I just want some service from a waitress, I'll go in there and just get the service. But I've never been that way. And it's because of my mom, because she always got to know people by their name. And if you understand the process and you learn the names, not only do you get better service, but you get remembrance, you get everything, you get these conversations that are wonderful, that are beautiful. You strike up a little mini relationship. And in some cases, if you're with these people over time, oh, you've got a great relationship. How are the kids? How's your husband? How's the wife? How is all of that. But it's about relating and knowing and getting to know your people. And does that take a little extra effort? Yes. Does that take intentionality? In most cases, yes. Like with my mom, I think I'll give her all this credit. She was a natural at getting to know people and who they were and where they were from. And I've worked at that knack. Now it's like it's becoming more second nature. But I would never say I was gifted at that. But I know people who are. As a leader, if you are not gifted that way, two things: you need to be intentional, and you may have people around you who can help you with getting to be that way. And so I would encourage everyone, because when it comes to culture is a lot of things, but really it just comes down to relationship. If you really want to boil it down, and I love to just boil down points to just right to their bare essence. It's relationship, right? So, and that's real simple. You get to know your people, and then great things happen. And then people learn how to trust you. And even when the storms of life come, because they're going to come, then you're able to go through them together, because everybody is interconnected and we're all on the same ship going in the same direction. But it's interesting. I don't know if I even answered your question, but I hope I got somewhere close to it.
You definitely got close to it. I think you're summarizing a lot of different aspects of leadership and about just building a community. A lot of teachers know that at the beginning of the year, it's really important to focus in on building a classroom community, building that grade level understanding that we're in this together. We're processing through this experience, whether it's a year or a course, together. And so then when you experience the opposite, someone who just reads the syllabus or lists out all the expectations, or like you said, hides in their office and doesn't communicate with people, it becomes really clear what you're missing, because the relationship is the foundation of any progress that you want to make when you're working with people. And with people, it also becomes that leadership titles can allow us to have this discrepancy between who's in charge, the authority in the school community. And that's an aspect where you don't necessarily need the leadership title to feel empowered as a leader, but a lot of educators, especially ones I speak to, feel that they don't have that authority built in, and therefore they're not allowed to share their ideas or initiatives or take on that getting to know people, bringing people into the community role. And it becomes this catch 22 of like they want to be a leader, but they feel like they need the authority piece.
Right. And I know part of your question was leadership is not a title. So I know I missed that one, but leadership is not. Somewhere in the book, I have this thing about you can't define me by a role. I'm more complex than that. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we all are more complex in a role, but it also bleeds back on the fact that leadership's not a title, because a lot of people in the building can be leaders and leaders at different times. And I've always said this, there can be students who are leaders who we need to and we need to elevate them when we find that jewel in them. But because of their knowledge, where it might be technology, I am not the most technological person in the world. I need a lot of help with that. Sometimes my mentees are the ones that help me with that. I have to lean on other people, but leadership's not a title. Leadership is, you can lead wherever you are. I'm going to throw one person in here, though, I was thinking about, and it's a JMU connection, but she probably left way before you came on board at Madison. But her ability to lead was not based on a title, because she didn't have those titles. She was a full professor. Her name was Eileen Nelson. But the thing that she did that was so good, and I remember it to this day, she even had some people change their majors. I know one in particular who they changed their majors because of the relationship she had with them. And and this was one of those freshman classes. You come in, there's 100 people in the room. How do you get to know 100 people and you're in one of those lecture halls? Eileen Nelson was one of those people that could get to know 100 people in various ways, but it was because she was intentional and she was just good at what she did. She was the type of person who gave you the syllabus, but now it's like, we're going to get down, we're going to get to know each other. And her door was always open. You could always stop by her office. And I know one in particular, one of my colleagues who had no idea what he really wanted to do. His parents had told him that you're going to go to college. You're going to go to college and you're going to graduate. Now, what you get out of there is whatever. But he decided on his major because of Dr. Nelson. And I know he told her before she passed away, I know he let her know that she inspired him so much. That's what I'm talking about when I think about a leader. I'm tying a couple of things in here, but a leader with not a title. She was definitely a leader on that campus. She made a difference in a lot of students' lives. And to this day, I think there's students that will remember. I brought her name up at a function that I had at Madison about 2 years ago. And 3 people came to me right after the talk, and they shared stories that they had of Eileen Nelson. Impactful. That's who she was. And so I have a whole lot of stories there, but I don't want to go off too far on that, because I knew I was going to do this JMU thing when I had you interviewing me.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many connections to pull on.
Yep.
I mean, I joined JMU in 2009, and even the Carrier Library and all of the different influence from folks on the campus in that time period, like they still echo into my life and the connections that I have
Right.
with people.
Right.
I had professors who I still reference every day when I'm thinking about how do I create something for learners? How do I communicate this idea to other people? So it is the leaders who might not have that title and the mentors who shape our relationships with other people and with the context that we're living in. And the next part I want to go into is thinking about the educator, the teacher who's listening and is feeling really stuck and overlooked, particularly if they've been passed over for roles and they feel like they're not able to show up because they don't have that opportunity in their school community or in their community at large. So what would be some advice to them of like how to step into the identity of a leader without needing that name, that title?
I mean, the advice would be to, I'll start out with an old Arthur Ashe quote. I love Arthur because he was a Virginian like me, grew up in Richmond, and he was a boyhood hero of mine. And so this Arthur Ashe quote is, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Start, use, do. Everybody can do those three things. Those are three things that we can all do. And if you just get started, you have something that's already embedded in you that you can use, and then whatever you can do where you are, which is kind of what I did, and I didn't have the knowledge of that quote back then coming off of that injury, but it was like, what can I do? Where can I plug in? You can do those things. There is so much, I hate to say it this way, but when it comes to not just education, but professional life, there's so much that we don't always understand. Sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's something else, and we don't understand why certain people get looked over. Some people get the apple and some people don't. If you stay the course and you do those little things, there are people that are watching you, and it may not be where you are. I had a class, Christina, years ago when I was teaching at Tarleton State, a little Texas A&M system school. And in the class, I worked with teachers that wanted to become principals because I had been a principal. Now, after the PhD, I got to a point where I was talking to educators who wanted to go into administration. And one of the things that I told them is kind of going along the lines of this question is that I know loyalty is a great thing, and I have been very loyal in the places that I've been. But there comes a point where you have to look out for yourself and for your family. And what you do is you do the best you can where you are. And if opportunities arise because of I guess you could say the kind of the portfolio you built up, it puts you in a position to be able to be maybe scooped up by someone else. It might not happen in your particular area, or it might not happen in your school district or ISD. It may be that you have to kind of think outside the box. I mean, I'm talking to the outside the box thinker in Christina Cotman, because there you are, you're in Brazil, you're doing this stuff, amazing stuff, international education, but you're going to be impacting you are impacting the entire globe. Some of us kind of have a narrow focus in terms of what we think we can do and how we should do it. But what I was trying to do in essence was trying to get them to keep your doors open, but also while you're where you are, you can't be the best word I can use is you can't be dismayed, and you cannot be despairing. You've got to stay hopefully in that sweet spot where you're hopeful. And if you're hopeful and you're doing these things, and we're in a field where it's real easy to stay hopeful if you're working with your students and kind of focusing on how you can get them to the next whatever. Because there's always little victories, daily victories that you can kind of hang your head on. If I can just get somebody to do that math problem today, I mean, that's a victory today, right? And especially it helped me a whole lot with that, because you have to be very patient. The victories don't come every day, but when they do, they are powerful. And it's like your bonus. And those are the things that can keep you positive, while these other things that are, it reminds me, things that are out of your control, you don't control. But what I do control is how I start, how I use what I have, and how I do whatever I can do in that particular area that I feel that I'm in. You can still do those things, even with a top-down hierarchy that may or may not be responsive, or may not even see that what you are. You just continue to do what you do. Go back to finding those mentors, finding good people that can come alongside, and something is good is going to happen and going to take place because of what you do.
Exactly. And I would add on that I'm thinking back to my time at JMU, especially as a student teacher, when I felt like I didn't have a lot of autonomy. I was, in a classroom where I had to follow the instructions of my mentor teachers, and I was completing grad school work. But I found opportunities in the community in Harrisonburg to be the leader, to take on a role of instructing some students in an after school program, and to lead a reading group at the local library. So there might be opportunities outside of your professional role where you can step into leadership and you can fulfill that need in yourself. I think it's exactly, it's such a complex identity shift to think of yourself as a leader when external circumstances haven't given you that title, but it's an attitude, it's a belief in yourself and the change that you can make in the world.
It really is a belief in yourself. Let me kind of bag up just a little bit, Christine, because you gave us so many good tidbits there. You should be the one that's on the screen and having these questions. So when you said what you said about what you did at James Madison, which was like you sought, I'll put quotation marks around it. You sought other opportunities outside. You were outside the box. You're an outside the box thinker. You sought these opportunities. Although a little bit, there were things that I did at Madison that were outside of the JMU campus because I got connected with the community. So get involved with your community because there are opportunities there that are, you never know who's going to see you and whatnot. I'll give you a story of a young man, and it wasn't even the education, but it's a good story because it's what we're talking about. And you work so hard and you do such a great job that I know people have observed you. And this young man, where we are in Fort Worth, was I hate to say just a waiter, but he was waiting tables. But he did it at such an excellent level that one of the billionaires in Fort Worth, the Bass brothers are well known probably all over the country, but they are pretty much the biggest and maybe best known family, saw what he was doing. They built a new opera hall and they hired him because of his work excellence to be one of the staff executive leaders at that hall. Can you believe that? And I don't even know what his degree was in, but I know it was because I had him as a server too, and he was par excellence. But people are watching you. They're looking at you. I always say the kids are always watching you because they watch you even when you don't think they watch you. They're watching you. And people are watching you. Just keep doing what you do and do it at a high level because you do things at a high level. And you never know who will come along or who will give you an opportunity or who will say, you know what, I love what Christina does. I want to make her the executive director of this particular program and whatnot. If she'll have me and have the job, those things happen. That's not a fairy tale.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities out there in the world, and it's shifting from this sense of lack of I don't have the role, I don't have the title, to where could I serve people? Where could I be involved in relationships and in the community and really center myself in the identity that I can support others and I don't need to have some external marker of success to be able to do that. I think it's important to kind of emphasize that the culture of a school is all about those relationships. And that's why teachers are always invited to start with relationship building in their classrooms. And that parents also are part of that community, and connecting with the parents that you are supporting, the families that you're supporting, is another aspect of being a leader in a school community. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk all about the setbacks. Because as you alluded to in the first episode, there can be physical injuries that set you on a different path, but also emotional injuries that affect our career and the feelings of worth and satisfaction with our profession. All right. Any last thoughts about leadership? Any big advice for the person listening? That final big takeaway.
Oh, I think you stole in a good way all that good thunder, but it's like you said it. You said, "Where can I serve?" It's like just change your paradigm. If you're it's how do I say this in a nice way? If it's the war is me, and I used to say, maybe this dates me. You're having a pity party with yourself, and it's like, why can't I do this, or why won't they let me do this? Change your focus. The mindset has to change. Until you change your mindset, you're not going to get out of that conundrum or dundrum that you're in. And so you've got to start focusing on how can I serve? And you said it perfectly. You focus on who you can serve. And you don't know what may happen with that. But I tell you one thing, I do know what's going to happen. Some people are going to be affected. You're going to impact people. I had a leadership expert tell me leadership is influence. You're a leader if you're a teacher because you're influencing whatever 25 or 30 students, right? You're already a leader. You just don't know it. You don't have the title or the official title or what we call as the, that standardized title, but you're a leader. Now walk in that leadership or walk in that because there are things you can do and who knows what you can do.
Exactly. And you're already a leader. You just need to take on that identity and step into it right now. Oh, perfectly said. So if you're enjoying our conversations, stick around for our third episode. We're going to talk all about resilience through setbacks, especially as educational professionals. So we'll see you in the next one.